Hello, my name is Matthew Yakov, and in this video I'm going to show you how to configure multiple analytics nodes in the cluster format. So first of all, our topology. I have Versa Director, Versa Controller, and Versa Analytics. First node. This Versa Analytics and Controller already configured, and you can see in here, so we have one controller, we have configured analytics cluster, and now to create cluster topology we need to add the second analytics node. Let's do this. Okay, so the second analytics, let's call it analytics 2, and let's power it on. Okay, now let's connect this analytics interface to the management network, and let's also connect analytics to our control network. Now the console. Initial configuration. Okay, I'm gonna pause recording while I'm doing the initial configuration. Okay, second node is configured. Now let's add it. First of all, to configure the backup cluster, we need to go to the director and configure this second cluster settings. So it's going to be analytics cluster 2. Northbound address in my case is 10.40.113.92. And southbound address is 172.16.192, port 1234. Okay, so far we configured second analytics node, this one. We added first and the second, we added controller. Now let's add the second analytics cluster to the Versa controller. In the production, this would need to be done on both controllers or on the however controllers you have in your network. Okay. In the controller, we would need to go to the Services tab. Don't forget to choose the main organization on the controller because the ADC menu will be present only on the main organization. Now, in the servers, first of all, we need to add the second server. So the new server for the new cluster. And let's call it LEF2. IP address, the IP address that we need to put in here should be the IP address of the control network. So let me make it a little different. Okay, and okay, so this interface of the control network, and this IP address needs to be added to the ADC. In our case, it's 172.16.192, and the port is 1234. Okay. Now, the routing instance should be Versa Control VR. Second, we need to create the WAN pool because it's going to be the backup pool. Okay, and don't forget, if you have multiple nodes in the cluster, like for example, if you would have 2 analytics nodes and 2 search nodes, they would all be in the first pool, and if you would have the backup cluster, they would be in the second. So right now, this is only for educational purposes. We're creating 2 different pools to just configure one of them as the primary and second as the backup. Now, the most important part, where we can actually configure the virtual IP address on which the controller will be listening for the incoming connections. So this will be the IP address on which the controller is listening for incoming connections from all the branches. And by default, it sends all information to the WAN pool. So this was configured by the workflow. Now we need to add the backup pool, the one that we just configured, WAN pool 2. And that's it. Configuration on the controller is done. Now we need to do the same on all the controllers. And let's see from the CLI what was actually achieved and what we configured. Okay, here's the controller. And if we'll look in the org services for diverse organization, in the ADC config, we can see that currently we have 2 servers. We are monitoring them both, and the operational state is up of the first one and the second one. At the same time, if we want to see the details, it's going to show us that the first server is monitored by the ICMP default probes, and the second one is monitored by the ICMP by default. So by default, the system created the monitoring for the analytics nodes, and it's only checking if the node is up and running, and that's it. At the same time, if we want to see things like in the ADC, the virtual service status, so we're listening on this port, on the port 1234. And if we want to see the details, right now all the connections are being redirected to the 172.16.191, so they're only redirected to the first cluster. If we would have multiple nodes in the first cluster, they would be load balanced across them, but right now we have only one. Now let's see if the system will track the reachability or unreachability of some of the services. So let's disconnect the analytics one. We're suspending connection here. And let's see how soon the system will detect that the analytics node 1 is down. Okay, so it took approximately 10 to 15 seconds for the system to define that the node was down, and now we'll look at the okay, so it shows that the service is the first WAN is down, but it's not showing if it's going to the next one. Okay, let's check the actual connection. So on the first analytics, if we'll go to the CLI and see the connections, collector connections, so we don't have any connections on the first analytics, but let's see what is going to be on the second one. Okay. Okay, so the system failed over the connection to the second WAN, but that's strange. In the ADC it still shows as down. Probably it's some kind of a bug in the GUI or in the CLI, but in fact the ADC itself, so it worked, it failed over the connection from one node to another. Now, As you can see, by default, we are only tracking the state of the analytics node by the ICMP probes. If we would want to do something more sophisticated, like for example, monitoring of the actual log collector, if the analytics node is up or down, I mean, it's not necessarily that the ICMP probe will show the actual state of your analytics. So let's get the connection back and let's see how we can configure additional services to monitor TCP ports. So in the configuration of the controller, you need to go to the ADC, and in here we need to create the new monitor. So let's call this TCP monitor. The probe type is going to be TCP. Protocol parameter, we will monitor port 1234. So the ADC will try to establish TCP sessions. It's a very simple check, so it's basically just sending the TCP SYN, and if it receives TCP SYN ACK, it thinks that the service is up. Okay, so everything else let's leave default, and now let's go to the servers, and we will attach this monitor to the first node, and let's attach the same monitor to the second node. Now let's see on the controller. So if we will go to the server detail, now it shows that it monitors through the TCP monitor, not the ICMP. And let's see if, for example, we will, okay, first of all, the current connection is still to this node. Let's see if we will not put down the whole node, but only put down the analytics engine. Will the system be able to check this using TCP probes? Okay, so analytics service is down, and soon it should fail over to the first node again and define that the second node, this one should become down. Okay, now it became down, and virtual service summary still up, detail, so shows properly, and let's see if the connection is now on the first node. Yes, connection was failed over to the first Burst Analytics node. So this summarizes our Burst Analytics cluster configuration. In this video, we reviewed how to configure the second analytics node, how to add it to the controllers, how to configure advanced monitoring using TCP ports. And I hope this was informative for you, and thank you for watching.